When I think of some of the funniest comedy series of the 21st century, certainly one of the biggest ones is 30 Rock. The show was created by Tina Fey, who proved her comedy skills as head writer on Saturday Night Live and even writing the movie Mean Girls. With the support of Lorne Michaels, she pitched a series to NBC. She initially wanted to set her show at a cable news network, and it was going to be about a liberal-leaning producer coming into conflict with a new right-wing pundit, with Alec Baldwin being considered for the role. However, an example of how network executives can sometimes have the right idea, the president of NBC suggests that Fey should instead draw from her experiences on SNL and have it be about a sketch comedy show instead. Thus, 30 Rock was born, with the series now centering on Liz Lemon, the head writer of a sketch show trying to put the show together each week. The pundit character was turned into Jack Donaghy, new vice president of East Coast television and microwave oven programming, with Alec Baldwin cast in the role. Fey then filled the wrestling ensemble of a wacky assortment of characters, ranging from her tired producer to the stars of the show whose ego she has to control. Part of the enjoyment of the series is seeing how their personalities clash, as these are all flawed people basically forced to work together to create entertainment for the masses. Although the main joke of TGS was that it consisted of only lowbrow comedy and obvious parodies. 30 Rock, on the other hand, was very smart with its humor, with so many layered jokes and clever lines. The writers came up with all sorts of storylines that allowed for a bunch of crazy gags, which can involve a visual joke or a cutaway. A common occurrence in each episode is introducing some minor detail or joke in the B or C plot, which will then return and connect with the main A plot by the end of the episode. That's just one example of how cleverly plotted the series was. Back to the characters, Liz was very much a Seinfeldian character, as she often made decisions purely for her own selfish reasons, which led to some hilarious outcomes as she sees the consequences of her actions. While there were oddly frequent jokes about Liz being old and undesirable, even though Fey was 36 when the show began. Then there was her dynamic with Jack Donaghy, wonderfully played by Baldwin. The right-wing beliefs of the original pundit character remained here, with 30 Rock using Jack to comment on the Bush-era politics at the time it started airing in 2006. The series itself would incorporate the current political environment from the end of the Bush administration to Obama's presidency to the 2012 election between Obama and Romney. However, while it's commenting on current events, the writer was able to tackle them in a way that would not date the show years later, although Jack's conservative views seem almost quaint now. There were also a lot of jokes about his capitalist mindset, with him seeing dollar signs everywhere. Something that's greatly appreciated is that Tina Fey had no interest in turning Jack and Liz into a romantic couple, something another show might have built towards. They have more of a mentor-mentee relationship, which was wonderfully developed over the course of the series. Then we have the two divas that Liz has to wrangle. Tracy Morgan was cast as Tracy Jordan, an exaggerated version of himself, and while he was often depicted as an irresponsible troublemaker, there are jokes that show he's a lot more perceptive than people realize. And Jane Krakowski is hilarious as Jenna Maroney, who's very much the stereotypical demanding actress constantly trying to put herself on camera. While she starts off with occasional moments that highlight her close friendship with Liz, she gets more unhinged in each subsequent season to hilarious results. The show also took advantage of Krakowski's Broadway background by having her belt out the occasional song. One of my favorite 30 Rock moments is a musical number set to Midnight Train to Georgia, which begins with Tracy singing it before Jenna sees an opportunity and barges in. I'm actually a little surprised, though not more of these elaborate musical numbers, with most of the songs primarily relegated to the TGS stage. I also like how Tracy and Jenna begin as rivals, but eventually turn into frenemies, with them often partnering on elaborate and stupid schemes. Interesting enough, in the original unaired pilot, Rachel Dratch played Jenna. The decision was made to recast her in the role, partly because it was felt this version of Jenna was too similar to Liz. You can find her scenes from that pilot online, and while she does okay, Krakowski really did transform the role into something special. Dratch then appears several characters, mainly during the first season, including providing humorous impressions of Barbara Walters and Elizabeth Taylor. While there was initially a focus on showing the sketches on TGS, that eventually took a back seat, and 30 Rock became more of a workplace sitcom and a relationship comedy, which I'm fine with. Although as a result of this, the show seemed to struggle with what to do with the third TGS cast member, Josh, and the writers sort of forgot about him after a while. They even make an in-joke towards this in one of the character's last appearances. Danny was then brought in as his replacement, only for the writers to quickly run out of storylines for him too. Liz, Jack, Tracy, Jenna, the TGS writers, and Kenneth the Page seemed to soak up most of the attention. Speaking of Kenneth, Jack McBrayer made him one of the most enjoyable characters in the series, with his glee at working in the MC studios. One of my favorite running jokes is how he's seemingly immortal and somehow keeps working in the Page program, even though MC Pages are only on the job for 1 year. By the way, someone who got his start as a writer on 30 Rock was Donald Glover, who contributed quite often to Kenneth's lines, especially the times he talks about his southern upbringing. A lot of attention was paid towards the various romances Liz and Jack had throughout the course of the show. The writers made sure to make these different partners distinct with their own funny quirks. Typically, Liz will find this potential partner to be a perfect match, only for their flaws to become apparent, including an airline pilot played by Matt Damon and a doctor played by John Hamm. There are also one-off boyfriends, and in a funny twist, she keeps bumping into a British man named Wesley Snipes and played by Michael Sheen, who she develops no romantic interest in. Jack goes through a revolving door of girlfriends as well, who have their own amusing personality traits. There's a lot of humor out of the way the show pokes fun at the corporate culture at NBC. During the first few seasons, there are several bits about NBC Universal's then parent company General Electric, with Jack being just as focused on creating the perfect microwave as he is on choosing what airs on the network. And when NBCU was in the process of being sold to Comcast, this was comically depicted on 30 Rock, although for some reason it was changed to a fictional company named Cabletown. I never quite understood why they were able to use GE but not Comcast, but I guess creating a fictional stand-in gave them more freedom to depict the new parent company however they wanted. And 30 Rock exists in its own universe anyway. For example, Saturday Night Live does not exist in the 30 Rock reality, although there are a few nods. TGS airs on Friday night as opposed to Saturday, and is filmed at Studio 6H instead of 8H. Curiously, despite the absence of SNL, Conan O'Brien and Jimmy Fallon still get their talk shows in this universe. Although it's also possible 30 Rock exists in an alternate timeline, where NBC did not bring back Lorne Michaels in 1985 and SNL was cancelled. There are other humorous nods to the network, including a parody of the Conan O'Brien Jay Leno timeslot debacle involving two janitors who want the same nightly shifts. Funnily enough, while the exterior scenes were filmed at 30 Rockefeller Plaza, the scenes set within the building's offices, stages, and hallways were filmed in a studio in Queens. But the production designers did a good job on the sets, with the TGS writers' room being directly based on the SNL writers' room. Due to the way the show parodied the media landscape, it proved quite prescient at times. There's an episode with Jerry Seinfeld where he finds out his likeness has been inserted into NBC shows without his permission. A technology that copies a famous person's appearance and has them do or say things they never did. What a wacky idea. And there are other times where Jack expresses his desire to replace the writers and pages with computers, with him even doing the latter in one episode to disastrous results. There's another episode where Jack adds voice activation to a television set, but ends up also taking the commands of the TV show characters on the screen, which Alexa would also later do. There are so many inspired wacky gags throughout the series that add to the lunacy of the whole thing. One of the most memorable is when we see a glimpse of Tracy's novelty music video, Werewolf Bar Mitzvah. It appears for only a few seconds, but it's perfect. There's even an extended version you can listen to that adds to the joke. The writers invented made-up traditions for Leap Day, including a mythical figure named Leap Day William, and filming scenes for a fictional movie where Jim Carrey plays a workaholic who transforms into William. There are also several fourth-wall breaking jokes, whether they involve characters talking directly to the camera, or when 30 Rock makes fun of itself and the people behind the scenes. When NBC decided to devote their entire programming one week to spreading environmental messages, 30 Rock came up with an episode that directly made fun of that mandate. The show also knew how to use its guest stars. Elaine Stritch had a recurring role as Jack's mother, per giving quite a bit of depth to her crabby personality and providing several hilarious line readings. Will Arnett played Jack's rival, Devin Banks, leaving some great sound-offs between Baldwin and Arnett's deep voices. Chris Parnell was the incompetent Dr. Spichemin, with him constantly giving hilariously terrible medical advice, and Steve Buscemi was a private investigator who took on multiple disguises. Have you ever seen that "How do you do, fellow kids" meme and wondered the origin? It was from 30 Rock in a cutaway that parodied 21 Jump Street. And I was, of course, happy to see Matthew Broderick appear as a friend of Jack's who works in politics, which was a nice little The Last Shot reunion. Shout out to the 3 other Last Shot fans in the world. One person I'm surprised did not appear more often was Alan Alda as Jack's biological left-wing father. He only showed up in a few episodes, but he was great, with my favorite line of his referencing the final episode of MASH. The people playing themselves also seem game for what the writers require them to do. So my favorites include Conan O'Brien as one of Liz's ex-boyfriends, former NBC News anchor Brian Williams constantly spreading gossip in the building, Al Gore as an environmental superhero giving facts about how to help the planet, Don Cheadle reluctantly getting paid to promote a Republican candidate, and Weird Al Yankovic parodying one of Jenna's songs, much to her offense. And in the case of Before They Were Famous, Aubrey Plaza briefly appeared as a page in one episode during a time when she actually was an NBC page. Adding to the fast-paced nature of 30 Rock, Jeff Richmond composed a delightful jazzy score. In addition to the catchy main theme, which was even given lyrics in a few episodes, each character had their own memorable leitmotif. There are also themes for when Liz has to rush to resolve a problem, and a romantic theme. Something I should probably mention is that if you watch the show on streaming, a few episodes are missing. Some of the few jokes that are a little shirt-tugging now involve characters, mainly Jenna, putting on blackface. Of course, the jokes that the characters doing this are idiots, and TGS's token black writer, Twofer, even expresses how offensive it is in one episode. Tina Fey herself has commented that she may have gone to that well a little too much, and as a result, the episodes are not available to watch on Netflix, Peacock, and other streaming services. To be honest, while Stan Fey is embarrassed, I also think doing this treats the audience like children, as a simple disclaimer more than suffices, rather than making the other 20 or so minutes without blackface unavailable to watch outside the DVDs. While 30 Rock was critically acclaimed and won several Emmys during its run, including 3 for Outstanding Comedy Series, the ratings were always lackluster. Even the show itself would acknowledge this on multiple occasions, and Tina Fey would often crack jokes about the show's low ratings. However, the MC executives supported the series, renewing it for yet another season every year until Fey decided it was time for 30 Rock to end after 7 seasons and 138 episodes. It was the right note to end on, with Fey and the writers coming up with a perfect ending. After following the misadventures of these characters for so long, it was easy to form an attachment to these oddballs. While the show prided itself in its eccentric brand of humor, it was able to naturally segue into surprisingly emotional and touching territory for its final episodes, as Liz, Jack, Kenneth, and the rest of them find that purpose. 30 Rock had that ability of mixing smart and stupid gags in a hilarious way, while also developing the characters at its center. It's a show that remains a delight from beginning to end. See you next time.